I have had genital herpes for over 20 years. And at the beginning, I didn't tell anyone I was sexually active with.
This program is brought to you by Paper, Tutors for All. The last couple of years haven't been easy for students. Kids are struggling. Schools and families are too. But what if there were new ways to help? What if tutoring was part of every student's experience? What if it was available 24/7 and free? When schools choose Paper, students get free 24/7 access to tutors. And if you're listening to this right now, there's a good chance your child's school already has Paper or will be adding it very soon. Visit paper.co and find out more.
Shh. Welcome to the Secret Life Podcast. Tell me your secret. I'll tell you mine. Sometimes you have to go through the darkness to reach the light. That's what I did. After 12 years of recovery in sex and love addiction, I finally found my soulmate, myself. Please join me in my novel, Secret Life of a Hollywood Sex and Love Addict, a 4-time bestseller on Amazon. It's a brutal, honest, raw, gnarly ride, but hilarious at the same time. Check it out now on Amazon. Welcome to Secret Life Podcast. I'm Brianne Davis-Gant. Today I'm pulling back the curtains of all kinds of human secrets. We'll hear about what people are hiding from themselves or others. You know those deep, dark secrets you probably want to take to your grave? Or those lighter, funnier secrets that are just plain embarrassing? Really? The how, the what, the when, the where, and the why. Today, my guest is Bianca. Now, Bianca, I have a question for you. Dun, dun, dun. What is your secret?
My secret is I have had genital herpes for over 20 years. And at the beginning, I didn't tell anyone I was sexually active with.
Oh my God. Okay, let's dig in.
Let's dig in.
So here, the first question I'm just going to ask you is, when did you contract the virus?
Now that's the story.
Okay. Yay. Well, why else would you be here? But I'm so glad you're coming on and talking about this, because I do know a lot of people, just so you know, especially in Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, that have this.
Yeah.
So I'm beyond grateful you're coming to educate and inform and tell a little story.
Yeah. And I want to tell this story because I know I'm not the only one who has done this. Okay. So I'm originally from London. And so it's been over say maybe just almost 20 years. And so I was first told, possibly in quotation marks, when I went to the doctors just for an annual checkup, a sexual health checkup, and it was like a possibility. So
what do you mean? What do you mean? They just said you might have it, you might not have it.
They saw like a sore, but they couldn't really test for it because it wasn't it wasn't at that stage. So they
like inflamed or
inflamed.
Okay, yeah.
That's the right word. So I went with, okay, well, he didn't confirm it, so I don't have it.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was the denial. I refused to look into it anymore. I was like, well, he said maybe. I am going with maybe because I didn't want to know. Who wants to know that? Who wants to confirm that? Who wants to go back and ask everybody? And I kind of asked around on the low, but wasn't, really committing to it.
Well, here's my question before we get more
into
that.
I was in my early 20s.
That's what I want to say. How old were you?
Yeah.
And that stage in your life where you think you're invincible. Were you in that stage of your life?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I was in my early 20s. I must have been about, I don't know, maybe 23, 24. So I was in the early stages and, you're sexually active. So who wants to deal with all that? Who wants to own all of that? So after I was like, well, I can't find anything. No one else said they had it. So maybe it was wrong. And I'm just going to go with I don't have it.
So you kept a secret from yourself. You literally legit was like, I don't see it. It's not there. It's not happening. It's a secret to myself. I'm just going to store it back in my brain somewhere.
Yeah. Just in denial. total denial. Total, because I was scared of what that would mean for my future and what it says about me as a woman if you have a sexual transmitted disease. And so, also at that stage, I was a lot more insecure than I am now. I was nowhere as brave, as courageous that I am now. So that was not going to happen.
Especially, I feel like the pressure society puts on young girls on top of, getting a STD or something, all that pressure, I can imagine that you are not as brave and as strong and as confident because we don't know ourselves until I think our 40s. That's how I feel.
I mean, 20s and 30s, you think, oh yeah, 20s, okay, we'll have fun. 30s, yeah, I'm finally 30. And then you get to 40, you're like, whew, I made it. I am here. I have arrived. I am the boss. No one can tell you anything.
It really, you don't care about anything. I don't care about what people think of me, what they think I'm wearing. Even my husband, he's like, wait, you don't. I'm like, no, I'm doing it for me. This is for me. Yeah. Like, I don't care.
Yeah. Like, what did I do? Like now, this might be TMI, but now I don't care about shaving my armpits to make sure they're absolutely cleanly shaved. I'm like, whatever. If you're going to see some hair, you're going to see some hair. We're just going to keep it moving. It is not a big deal as it used to be. For me.
And that's why I'm so glad you're a woman. You're coming on talking about having this STD for 20 years. 20 years. Okay. So let's go back. We got off track, but let's go back. Like, so the doctor told you a maybe, you said, no, thank you. And then what happened?
So a few years later, I moved to Atlanta when I was 26. And so I went to the dermatologist. I don't even remember why I went. Maybe I felt like I was having ingrowing hairs or something like that and a problem with it. So I ended up going, and then the dermatologist confirmed and said, you have herpes. And he was like, oh, everyone has it. No problem. Be fine. And I'm like looking at him like, no, I'm devastated.
Yeah.
Okay. So I find that out and I still didn't tell. I still slept with people and nope. I was too caught up in the shame and the embarrassment and fear of rejection. So it was about one or two people. And I'm like, oh, so one or two, two, and maybe three. No, it was two that was a situation with. And I talked to a friend and I told them and I revealed to them and they were like, you got to tell. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like so scared because it was two people. I told them both and it was at different times. One was of course scared and worried, but I gave them as much as I could and told them, to go get tested. The other one didn't want to talk to me anymore. Eventually a while, maybe a year or so after, they did start talking to me again. And, we're actually cool. Actually, both of them, like, it's still cool. And
so you're friends with both of them still?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Did they end up getting it?
No, thankfully.
Yeah.
And there were other partners I had. So remember I said that I was told and I didn't accept it and I was in denial and I told them. So those, and they were okay. They're like, well, why didn't you just say it before? I would have been cool. Like you just, and so, I feel all hot telling you. I felt this hot flush. Bringing memories.
I know it does bring memories, right? Because when we don't live our truth, when we don't tell our truth, it creates all that anxiety and takes you back to that time when you feel so powerless, even over your own body.
Yeah. And so, but when I told the ones in America, that rocked me. That was like when I finally was like, I have to accept this. And that was tough. You go through, no one's ever going to want to be with me. Mm-hmm. I'm dirty. How did this happen? Who did I get it from? And after a while, I just stopped trying to stress myself about who did it come from, because I just didn't feel like I was ever going to find out. Mm-hmm. I have a suspicion, but I just not even bringing it up.
So you kind of have an idea though. Like if you go back in the time, you're like, I think I know who the culprit was.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing with genital herpes, you don't really know. They might not even know that they had it and passed it on. So they could be telling you no, but they do, but they didn't know.
No, that's what I just found out recently. And it's so interesting that we're talking about this because just yesterday, my whole meeting at Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous was about this. I was like, how strange, because yes, I swear to God, the other day, and I was like, I'm about to do this interview. And I was like, wow, this is God speaking. And it's one of the informations is you can have it and never have an outbreak and never know you get it if you're not tested for it.
Exactly. And they don't test for it.
Yeah.
You have to request a test.
So I could have it and have no idea, So yeah, it was very fascinating. And it's scary going out into the world though and saying, I have this thing. Do you want to date me? Like that's terrifying.
Yes. Absolutely terrifying. Absolutely. And that's the reason why I didn't tell. And that's why I like to share my story that I didn't tell. Yeah. Because I know there's other people who are sleeping with people and have not told them. And I get the shame and the embarrassment and the tunnel and just like your own isolation. And how can you, now you've done it, how can you go back and do it? And I know people who still do it. I know people who do that.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell them, I say, hey, this is what I done. I was taking away people's choice. I was. And so when you're not telling, you're taking away someone else's choice.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I understand it's so scary and so shaming. But then you're not able to live in your truth. Like you were saying, when we don't live in our truth, we feel uncomfortable, we feel anxious. And the truth is, I'm so much more than my diagnosis. I'm not my diagnosis. My diagnosis doesn't define who I am. That's something that I have. It's like if, we always talk about genital herpes, but we don't talk about cold sores. It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
Exactly the same thing, but it's in a different place on your body.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that because it's so true. And I get cold sores when I get really stressed out and it's hot weather. I have had like 2 before. But I still get embarrassed if I have like a little one and I can't like kiss my husband. It's embarrassing. And so I get that shame and that stigma in a different way. Exactly. But even being a sex and love addict, I know a lot of people when they are dating, they don't want to say, hey, I'm in this program. Hey, I have a problem with relationships because there's so much stigma and shame.
And that stigma and shame is why why we're not talking about the diseases and why they keep going because of the shame associated with that and how people begin to look at you.
I do want to ask you a question. I want to take you back to the first time you lived your truth and you told someone you were dating that you had it.
Yeah.
How did that conversation go? What was the feeling and what was the outcome?
Yeah, I like sharing that part. So I told this guy, I don't even remember how it came up, but I just shared it with him and he was so okay. So the fun part was calling my friend after I told it. He said it's okay. You're like, and it's just like, yay, high five. You're like, whew. I think the first time you're like, whew, okay, it's not as bad. And so he was really cool. He knew about it. So I didn't feel dirty. I didn't, it was still, some of that anxiety. And I always say this to people, what also helped is one of my male friends, and even the males that after I told they were still okay. I think that helped me too, to build my confidence and let me know there are men out there that are not going to reject you, and that you can find people who will accept you and will be understanding. And I think that helps build confidence and not let me feel so isolated. So yeah, that the first time it was like, okay. But then I had another time where it didn't go well and that person didn't want to be with me. So
what did they say to you? Do you remember?
I don't remember. They were like, okay. And then we just didn't really talk after that.
They ghosted?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See, but that's the thing, that some people are going to accept you and some people are not. And that's okay. Yeah. And that's what I teach just my kid, just in general. I'm like, some people are going to like you and some people are not. And it's the same thing with dating, with if you feel like you have this stigma and shame in any way that you're different or not normal, you know, whatever normal is, but it's like, some people are not going to be okay. And it doesn't define you.
No. And I think that's what it comes to. You know, I hear a lot of people talk about that when they did find out their diagnosis. And I'll say this happened to me maybe a bit after, but they did a lot of self-seeking. It caused them to do more self-seeking and look inward and kind of slow down and build up on their confidence and insecurities. And I think it does do that when you're willing to accept it. You know, I was in denial. I mean, you can relate to accepting that you have a problem, right?
100%. I mean, yeah. Have you read the book? Like, yeah, it's to see this part of yourself where you are different from other people is really hard. Just go out into the world and feel good about yourself. So I agree. Instead of acting out, it's like, wait, let me go inwards and see where I have to work on myself to build myself up, because it doesn't matter what other people say.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, just doing that, having education, having that support system, you know, it took a few years. I told my mom, but it took me years before I told my mom. It came to that point where I felt like I really want to share this with her. It wasn't, you know, I felt like at that point I was holding back and wanted to share that. And she was really supportive and she was like, well, thank you for telling me. It was just on my heart to share. Yeah. And so it took me a few years to do that. And then 2 years ago, I knew I would do this at one point. God was like, oh, you're going to share this with the world. I'm like, hell no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. The God's like talking to you and you're like, no. That's me. That was me. I was like, no, I'm not interested. I don't want to do it. Leave me alone. Yeah. And it kept like coming at you. Yeah. Tell me about that. So when was your God shot moment? Like you just kept hearing
it was once, and it was years ago. It was like maybe 6-7 years ago. It wasn't, oh, you're going to share it. And it was the next day. It was like, you're going to do it. And I'm like, no. And maybe put that back in that denial. Totally. And then one day I was on Instagram and I was scrolling for a hashtag, I guess people to be on my first podcast. And it was a no shame. And I saw this woman, Stephanie, and she was sharing, she had about her genital herpes. And I was like, oh, is this what people do now? They share. So then I started to hashtag genital herpes and I was like, oh my gosh, all these people are sharing. And so they inspired me. They inspired me and I'm like, oh, and then I was like, oh, it's that time. And as I was doing this, you know, my first podcast, Authentic Wednesday, and I'm like, I cannot be on here and not share this. It's not that I don't feel like being authentic, you have to share everything about you. I just feel like I knew for me that I wasn't being authentic because I knew what God wanted me to do. So that's different. That's good. Different.
And you did the healing that you needed to do before you did that. And and I call it oversharing. And that's like a form of like love bombing and oversharing and trauma bonding, that you overshare before you've actually healed. So I love that you said, like, it took you a long time to talk about your journey.
Yeah.
So go on. Yes. So I'm so proud of you.
No, thank you. So it took a while. And then I was like, okay, how am I going to share this? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have someone interview me because it just felt better. So then I go to my friend, who's my business partner, he's my friend. He's a business partner, a fellow therapist, and he's in the office next to me. So I knock on his door. It's like, yeah, I need to tell you something. He's like, what? I was like, so first I have to tell him I have genital herpes. He's like, okay. And then I want you to interview me. And I was very strategic because I wanted a man. I didn't want a woman. And I was very strategic in that.
Why didn't you want a woman? I'm just curious.
Because I wanted a man to interview me, and just from my personal perspective of, I'm heterosexual. So to me, that was more powerful for a man to interview a woman when there's so much stigma amongst men rejecting women for having genital herpes. And I wanted, and that was my thought process. There's a method behind my madness. And so that's why I wanted to have that. We kind of call that, in therapy, everyone of therapists, we call that, oh my God, it's just gone out my head. The name. It's like a therapeutic relational repair. I cannot think of the name right now. So like if you're a female and you have a male therapist, you're repairing that relationship, perhaps if you didn't have a good one with your dad. So
yes, and which my therapist was a woman, because I had a lot of work with women to do. So there you go with that one.
There you go. See? And that's why I wanted him. And of course I trust him. And so it went, and he was like, wow, thank you for sharing. First of all, thank you for choosing me. And it was a phenomenal interview. And so we just went ahead and did it. And then the day was approaching, and I'm like, okay. Yeah. I was okay. And I had someone else that was just checking in. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. It's gonna come out. I'm cool. I'm good now. Because I think at that point I was at the stage where I wanted to share to set other people free. Yeah. I wasn't at the stage where I needed you to tell me, you're going to be okay. I wasn't at that stage. To reassure you, it was actually, you were like doing it to be of service to other people. Yeah, so they didn't feel alone, right? Yeah. And that was the whole point. So it comes out, share. Everyone's like, amazing, love it. All the comments, thank you for being so brave. And then comes the inboxes. Then comes the phone calls. Then comes the emails. Then comes the texts. Me too. Something similar happened to me. And it was, oh my God, I just heard it. I have to talk to you. Do you have 5 minutes? Thank you for so much for sharing. And that was like, that made it all worth it. Right? Just even one of them. Right? That's what I said. If I can help one person not feel alone, then we've done our job. Like, yeah. It's not mine anymore. This story is not mine anymore. Yeah. And it just made it all worth it. Everything I went through, everything I did, I wouldn't change a single thing, because if I changed it to a point where, I accepted it, then I wouldn't have the story of relating to people who slept with people and didn't tell. Yeah. And that is a powerful thing to say. Like, I did this. It wasn't great, but it doesn't define me as a person. Like, I always say I've done bad things, but I'm not a bad person. Yeah. We're all in fear and being abandoned and not being loved. And that is exactly what it is. And so when you get to that point where you're like, I love me, and are you going to love me too? You have a choice. Either you do or you don't, but I'm still going to love me. It no longer has that sting. And so, you're just rewriting your whole narrative. Like, you are not your diagnosis. Like, that's what I want people to know. Like, you're way more than that. And, it hurts and it's shaming and it's embarrassing. Or if the person who gave it to you and didn't tell you, then, you're angry. Yeah. Thankfully I was I hadn't passed it on to anyone. So, I'm thankful for that. I think I probably would have went through another devastation, but then I would have had a story to tell. Yeah. And so, this is where I am. And this is why I continue to share this story. And are you dating now? Are you seeing someone? I'm open to dating, but I'm not dating anyone. I am also, I'm also abstinent, but that's not because of the genital herpes, because I slept with people when I had genital herpes after I told them. I always let people know that, like, I didn't stop having sex because of genital herpes. It was other, just more spiritual reasons why I haven't. So no, I'm open if anyone wants to reach out.
I love that we're like becoming a dating service, Secret Life dating service.
Because I feel like you've heard my story. So you you know everything. You know what to do. Don't have anything to hide now.
Well, that's the beautiful thing. It's like two people sharing their truth, and it's like that it just gets released and it's going to help the world. And I'm so grateful you came on. You know, I know you talk about it on your podcast. Will you tell people about your podcast? And hopefully we'll link the episode that you did with your therapist friend.
Yes.
Below, so
I'll send that. Yeah. I'll send that to you. And that's the Authentic Wednesday. And then I actually have my new podcast, which is coming out April 13th. It Didn't Break Me. And I'm actually talking again a bit more. I actually have my girlfriend actually interviewing me about what it was like to share my story to the world. So it's like, you know, the sharing part is a thing that you think is going to break you, and it didn't. And so I just talk about what it's like and all the different people I shared with. And so you hear a bit more in depth and another angle. So it's the Authentic Wednesday is the original. And then the new one is It Didn't Break Me.
Because it's never going to break you if you don't let it, you know. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your journey. And if anybody needs any of her information, please check the show notes. And I'm so grateful to know you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And if you want to be on the show, please email me at secretlifepodcast@icloud.com. Until next time. Thanks again for listening to the show. Please subscribe, rate, share, or send me a note at secretlifepodcast.com. And if you like to check out my book, head over to secretlifenovel.com or Amazon to pick up a copy for yourself or someone you love. Thanks again. See you soon.